Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone.
Chased down by Beal in the corner for three, gets fouled and hits.
Welcome to DC.
They tag him out.
You know where you're at, the USA Cup. You're taking it slightly, I'm taking it slightly. Now how you gon' act, but we gon' be right back. Well, we gon' be right here, we gon' be right here. We ain't going nowhere. Welcome to DC. DC, the home of Chuck Brown. Oh, you don't know the sound? Well, let me break it down.
What's good, everyone? It's your boy Natsu with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone. And I mean, this guy, Mr. Logan Paulsen, needs no introduction. But Logan, thank you so much for joining the DMV Sports Zone channel for this very, very special interview. Of course, I have my boy Abdullah as well, who will be joining me on this interview. And we have a lot to cover. The first thing that we want to ask you, though, is some questions about your career and your time in Washington. So the first question that we wanted to ask you was, as an undrafted free agent, did you expect to make the team originally? And how stoked were you to actually finally find a home in Washington when your NFL career started?
Yeah, so I had no expectation of making the football team here. I mean, I think it was kind of, I was coming off my senior year. I was coming off a really bad foot injury, so I had to get a medical. Then I played my medical senior year, and there just wasn't that much interest. I didn't run super fast. There was a little bit of interest post-draft. A couple teams called me, but and then when I got here, you're just around kind of the cream of the crop athletically, the guys who you've looked up to for a long time. You just kind of are like, well, it'll be fun to kind of hang out and play football with some of my idols for a couple of weeks. But I just was like, I'm going to give it my best shot and then maybe go back to law school or something. You know what I mean? I had no, it was very kind of nebulous in terms of what I was going to be doing. So I was just super grateful for the opportunity that Mike Shanahan and that coaching staff gave me. And, it just worked out. A couple guys got hurt, just kind of grinded out. And here we are talking about football after a 10-year NFL career. So I was more surprised than anybody, to be totally honest.
So a question that I'm really looking forward for you to answer is, what was it like playing with Robert Griffin III at the height of his career in 2012, along with Alfred Morris and Pierre Garçon, and that year after when you guys were 3-13?
Yeah, the height of his powers, Robert Griffin, right? I think the thing about Robert that, it was such a special opportunity, right? I mean, to go on a winning streak like we did and kind of make the playoffs and kind of be in that third year of Mike Shanahan's transition to being the head coach, and everything seemed to be going the right way. He was the type of player when he was really playing well that kind of made everyone on the team realize, he covered up a lot of guys' deficiencies, right? The O-line maybe wasn't as good as they could have been. The receivers weren't as good, but Kyle, with using that incredible mind that Kyle Shanahan has, was able to kind of game plan and make things work for that group of guys. And I was, after that year, I was like, man, I'll be a Washington football team player forever, because Robert's just going to help me kind of hide all the holes in my game. And at that point, there was a premium emphasis on a tight end that could understand kind of complex, novel run schemes, and I was really good at that. And then obviously that wasn't how it shook out in 2013. I think there was a myriad of things going on. I think one of the major things was Robert kind of thought he was a little bit ahead of where he was as a pocket passer, and that's a common thing that players go through, is your expectations and understanding of what you can do yourself are drastically different than the reality. And I think that was a big part of it. And so he really unintentionally, I think, kind of hamstrung what we could do offensively from the quarterback running game. And, that was tough, because obviously everything changed tremendously after that. Coaches got fired, people lost their jobs. I ended up getting cut in 2016, right before that season. So, that vision of what the team was going to be, what the organization was going to be, I mean, it really turned kind of on a dime with Robert's injury, Robert's kind of change in approach, and
now with the Washington football team, the current state of the franchise, we wanted to, of course, first ask you about the tight end situation, and specifically Logan Thomas. What are your expectations for him this season, and how about the rookie fourth-round pick that we had, tight end John Bates? What are your thoughts on him and his progress thus far in the offseason?
So, I've been a big fan of Logan Thomas for a long time. Ever since he kind of made the transition. He just coming out of college, when you see a guy who's 6'7" and 250, and running really well, you're kind of like, got to keep your eye on this guy. And so I did, and I watched him kind of, struggle a little bit playing quarterback in the NFL. And then finally when he made the transition, I thought, well, this might be the best thing that's ever going to happen for him. So I kind of kept an eye on him, watched his film. And, one of the cool things about him, I thought, was that he always seemed to be improving, always seemed to be getting better, which was really fantastic. And obviously you got to see the full kind of maturation of that development last year, with 72 catches or whatever he had, and really becoming a feature of the offense. So I think he's great. I don't know if he'll have 72 catches again this year, but I think he's kind of establishing himself as like a top 10, top 15 tight end of the NFL, which is awesome for a guy who's kind of been around in terms of, whirlwind type of tour in terms of, small deals, year here, year there, now to kind of find a home here in his hometown. I think it's pretty cool. And then obviously you mentioned Bates. Bates is I think going to be a really special kind of run blocking Y for, a decade. I think that's what he's going to be. He can catch the football a little bit. He's really outstanding in the run game. I think there's areas that he can improve, and I think he will improve. But I think he fills a nice role for this team, and it's something that I'm really excited for, because I think it's going to make not only the tight end room better, but it's going to make the O-line better. It's going to make the pass concepts better. When you have a guy who has a skill set, that's kind of defined by physicality the ways his is, I think he's going to be a pretty good player. So, and
you think Samus Reyes is going to be the third guy on the final 53-man roster?
So, I've had the privilege of working with Samis quite a bit, and like having seen him in person and having seen him in the preseason, to my eye, like I think that obviously the athletic and the psychological potential there is tremendous. But if I'm Ron Rivera, I don't know how great I feel about, making it like, if he's got to come in and play a ton early on in the season, how do you feel about that? And so one of the things I was trying to figure out is like, maybe you keep 4, until he's ready, kind of like week 6, week 7, and then he takes on a bigger role. Maybe you cut Ricky Seals-Jones. But right now, I just think he's so inexperienced from a coaching standpoint. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable with him at this moment. I think, yes, long term, I think he's going to be a great football player. I think he's going to have a nice career in the NFL. Maybe great's a strong word, but I think he's definitely going to have a nice career in the NFL. But yeah, I think, that's why that decision ultimately falls to Ron, right? Can he, what does he see? Has they seen enough of him? Because I've only been to 5 practices. I've watched 3 preseason games. Ron's been with him through the aggregate, right? He's been through the offseason, all the training camp practices, so he hopefully has a better understanding of what Sammys can and cannot do.
Are you comfortable with Washington's quarterback situation going into the season, especially with Ryan Fitzpatrick in the starter for week 1?
I mean, I'm as comfortable as anybody's going to be, right? I think, as far as quarterbacks go, I think he's fine. I think he's the top, I think he's definitely a top 32 quarterback in the world. So he should be starting for some team. He just so happens to be starting for the Washington football team. I think that's a little bit cheeky. I think he's probably a little bit better than that. I think he's probably in the top 20, maybe 25, if I'm being generous, that kind of range. But yeah, he's definitely a good player. I think the thing that people need to understand, I think his skill set really fits with what the Washington football team offense and Scott Turner want to be doing, right? Which is pushing the ball down the field, kind of that Air Coryell derivative that his dad kind of popularized. So that's what I'm excited about, because one of the things that really hamstrung this offense last year is they didn't have a quarterback in Alex Smith with a strong enough arm to like challenge defenses vertically the way that Ryan Fitzpatrick can. And everyone he's infamous or famous for the YOLO ball down the field. Like now he's got some receivers on the outside, Curtis Samuels, Terry McLaurin, where the YOLO ball is in fair play. You know what I mean? He's got De'Ami Brown also, guys who can run, stretch the field, stress the defense, and I think it's a good fit. I mean, obviously you're going to kind of go up and down with him, but unless you've got Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, like you are going to have some type of questions about the quarterback position. Even people like Josh Allen, like there is a big camp in the nation, football fans, that think he's going to have a big regression this year, and that's the nature of the business. Unless you have one of those top 3 guys, you're always kind of questioning. And I think, can the Washington football team upgrade at quarterback? Absolutely. But obviously, like with the offseason they had, I think they made the best of a bad kind of situation, if that makes sense.
Who knows? Maybe get one of those top 3 guys next offseason. I don't know. I mean, we got some cap room.
That's
maybe
right.
The opportunity might open up for us. But so we asked you about the quarterback. We asked you about the tight end. What is your thoughts on the record, the season win-loss record of this Washington football team by the end of the 2021 season and their placement in the NFC East?
I think a lot of fans are really hyped up. I think this team has gotten a lot better this offseason. I think they did a good job with the draft. They did a good job with free agency. However, like, their strength of schedule is stupid. Like, and fans just kind of want to gloss over that. Oh, we're going to the show. We're going to the championship, like whatever it is. But, you know, they got to play Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Green Bay, the Bills, Kansas City. Those are 5 extremely challenging games. They got to go to Denver on the road against one of the best defenses in the NFL, maybe arguably the best defense in the NFL. That's 6 tough games right there. And then they got to play Dallas twice. And Dallas, unfortunately, you know, like last year, they saw them without Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott is going to be back and in full swing, and that offense is going to be clicking, I'm pretty sure. The defense is going to be much improved. And so, like, instead of getting 2 kind of speed bump games where they didn't even need to slow down, they could just run right through that Dallas defense. Now they've got, that's, what is that, 8 games right there. Then you've got Herbert, defense or offensive rookie of the year candidate, and in the first game, and that's 9 games right there that look a little bit different, like right out the gate. And so I think this team is much improved. I think they're much better. I think fans should be excited. But I mean, even, like, to be totally honest, look at New York. Like, look at what they've done with their roster in terms of building around Daniel Jones. Like, the landscape of the NFL is drastically different now compared to last year, and in a good way. But I think it's going to be tough sledding for the Washington football team. Like, they relied so much on their defense last year that I think, you know, and like the offenses they were playing against weren't that great. But now they're going to have to really test their mettle against, like, the cream of the crop offenses. So I think, what would you say, 8-8, 8-9?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a totally realistic expectation. It could easily be lower than that, but it also in the same breath could be higher than that, depending on whether they hit their stride and, you know, how Fitzmagic looks, you know, like, is maybe something special happens. I don't know.
So going off the record prediction, do you think the Super Bowl window is open for this team? And if it's not, then how far do you think they are?
I think the Super Bowl window is so closely predicated on quarterback, right? Your quarterback position. And, you know, I just talked about how I feel about Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's a good player. I think he's a good fit for this team, but I think you can get better there. And I think if you look at the elite teams in the NFL right now, they have elite quarterbacks. And elite quarterback play does not mean good quarterback play. That means the quarterback that's defining that generation, right? I mean, just look at the playoffs last year. Nobody had a slouch quarterback going in. And I'm not saying like Ryan Fitzpatrick is a slouch. I think he's a good football player, but, you know, he's never been in the playoffs for a reason. And I think that, you know, he's been on some bad teams, what have you, and I think that might change this year. But, like, you need to find your quarterback in the future, and you need to keep building. Like I said, I love what the team did this offseason with the draft. I feel like they hit on nearly every draft pick, you know, maybe minus like Shaka Toney and then some of those 7th-round draft picks in terms of pass rush specialists. But in terms of the top end of their draft, they were outstanding. Good free agent decisions, kind of went bargain bin shopping, cleared up that cap room you already mentioned. So I definitely think they're doing things the right way. It's just, it's a tough road, man. It's a tough road to get to the Super Bowl. And I think if anyone says they're Super Bowl ready now, I think they're probably kidding themselves, you know? And I think, you know, I'm a fan of the team. I'm a fan of the guys. Like, I want them to do well. I hope that ends up being incorrect. But I think they've got a little bit of work to do still yet. Like, I think, just as an example, like, look at the Baltimore game. Look at Baltimore's too deep compared to the Washington football team's too deep. And, like, they had starters that were, like, out of the field in the fourth quarter, Baltimore did. And they were kind of running up and down offensively and defensively with Washington's team. And that's to be taken with a grain of salt because it's the 3rd preseason game. But I also think that it shows a roster depth that Baltimore has that the Washington football team necessarily does not. And good teams have that kind of depth. So,
and I mean, since you did mention him, Shaka Toney, and you mentioned pass rushing specialist, this is something that Bill and I have been talking about off camera a lot. But one of my biggest worries on the team is who's going to back up Chase Young and Montez Sweat, right? Like, we're one injury away from potentially having to start James Smith-Williams or Shaka Toney. What are your thoughts on who's going to back up the 2 stud bookends on the 53-man roster?
Well, I think when you have 2 stud bookends, everybody is going to pale in comparison to them. Like, I mean, you have 2 of maybe the freakiest human beings on the face of the planet playing for the same football team, playing the same position. Like, anybody after that is just going to look they're going to pale in comparison, unfortunately. And I look at, you know, the guys that are backing them up. James Smith-Williams, is a solid football player. He gives you nice flexibility, play inside, play outside, a nice physicality to his game, kind of going to do what he's supposed to do. But he's not Chase Young, he's not Montez Sweat. And then I think the other guy is going to be Casey Toohill. Like, no one's talking about him, but, like, I from what I've heard and from what I've seen in practice, like Shaka Tony is maybe a year or two if he's ever going to be ready. You know what I mean? He's got a little ways to go. And then the kid from Baylor, they're both kind of farther away than I think coaches want them to be. And so that leaves you with Casey Tuhill, who I think is by all reports coming out of off-season workouts and training mini camp and OTAs, he was playing with his hair on fire, but still that's a step below, like we said, the two mutant freaks that you've got kind of helming that defense. And unfortunately, if one of them goes down, and God forbid two of them goes down, like, you're just not as good a football team. Like, other teams have that same issue. You can't find first-round draft picks just walk around the street. It just doesn't work that way. So I think that is something to be concerned about. And that's not a knock on that second group of guys. It's just those guys are so good and so impactful. Like, what are you going to do?
You also got to consider COVID and guys missing games because of that as well. But the next couple of questions that we want to ask you are just some general NFL questions. And the first one that we want to ask is, of course, Travis Kelce was number 5 on the NFL top 100 list. And I think that was the highest ranking ever for a tight end on that list. And I think it's, of course, he had 1,400 yards. I think he was second in receiving yards for any receiver, let alone tight ends. Is it really just Travis Kelce and everybody follows suits in terms of the tight end rankings, in your opinion? I know there was a debate between Travis Kelce and George Kittle for a couple of years, but is it really just Travis Kelce is the guy, and is it really that close?
To me, it is. I mean, if I had to pick a guy, if I got a tight end, I'm starting my offense. I get to draft anyone in the NFL. I'm drafting George Kittle. I might even draft Darren Waller, over Kelce. And I'm a little bit of a purist at the position, right? Everyone gets, involved with like, this number of receiving yards. Like, to run an effective offense in the NFL, I feel the tight end needs to have some kind of blocking acumen. You know what I mean? And Travis Kelce was that guy. He was a bad man for a long time, but he's kind of transitioned out of that. And I understand that, like, blocking doesn't pay the bills, but George Kittle will block your face off. And Darren Waller, for being a converted wide receiver, plays with a nice physicality to his game. So I like their games better. I'm biased. You know what I mean? I was a blocking tight end. I played with Kyle Shanahan. He's going to run the ball, 55% of the time, which is unusual. That's well above the league average. I think in order to have like a system that insulates your offensive line, insulates the quarterback from making a lot of challenging decisions, you need to be able to run the football. And I think a big part of that's the tight end. It's not the only part, but it's a big part. And so I value those guys more. But in terms of Travis Kelce being number 5, like, his production speaks for itself. Dude's a beast. He's very productive. He can win in one-on-one situations. He can win versus man. And ultimately, that's what you want. Whether you categorize him as a receiver or a tight end, like, you want a guy who can win in money situations, third down, red zone, and he can do that. He's done that for years. And my hat's off. I got nothing but respect for him, and I'm super happy that he's so high on the list. But, if I'm picking my draft, go with my boy George. And also, I played with George. Come on, you know what I mean? Like, just like totally call out my own bias. Like, I got to go with George. He's my guy.
So, what are your thoughts on the new NFL taunting rule? You played back then, so it's been changed.
I don't even get it. Like, I saw like in the preseason game, Baltimore, like, some guy stood up without his helmet on. Right, that was the Baltimore game. Stood up without his helmet on and like stared a guy right in the face, and then like no call. And then the next series, a guy like stood up and did like a celebration with a teammate and got a taunting call. Like, I understand they want to kind of get away from, people looking like hoodlums and thugs and all that kind of stuff. And I get that. And I understand you're branding your product if you're the NFL. But I think it's part of the character of the game a little bit. I understand you don't want it to go to the extreme, but you also don't want it to go the other way either and be too conservative. Because I think a little bit of character keeps fans engaged, keeps the players engaged. It leads to a better product. But like I said, it's a pendulum. You don't want it to be too extreme where they're just yelling and cussing each other out all the time, but you also don't want it to be, like everyone's going to church, I guess.
The last question that we have prepared for you, what's your advice for kids out there that have dreams of playing in the NFL? Obviously, you were very successful. You made it to the NFL, and obviously you've had a successful post-career as well. But what is your advice for any kids out there who might be watching this, who are interested in playing in the NFL or maybe interested in getting to broadcast?
Right. So I would say this is the thing that I've lived my life by, this quote. It's hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. So, like, not everyone is going to have the physical acumen or the ability to play in the NFL, but you're never going to know unless you've squeezed every drop of talent out of yourself. And I think there's like this huge pressure on kids, to like be very talent driven. Like, I was not the most talented guy But I was hanging on to something that I shouldn't have even had. But I just like, this is the little story time with Logan Paulsen here. So like, you know, Fred Jones was starting ahead of me. Fred Davis, excuse me.
Fred Davis, yeah.
Fred Davis, sorry,
yeah.
Fred Jones. And then, and so he kind of had some like issues with the playbook and studying and showing up to meetings on time. And eventually, like, he was way better than me, way better. Second round draft pick, Mackey Award finalist. I think he might have won it that year, his senior year of college or junior year. And then Kyle Shanahan comes up to me and said, like, Logan, like, you're getting the start for the rest of the season. And I kind of was like, I remember saying, like, why? You know, like, and he's like, well, you've done everything right and we can trust you. And like, that is such an undervalued thing, you know, like just doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. And it might not work out, but like knowing that you've done everything you possibly can to like cover those bases, you'll at least be able to go to sleep at night, right? Like, you know, like when you at the beginning of the conversation, when you said, oh, did you think we're going to play in the NFL? And I said, like, not a chance, right? Like I was ready to go to law school. That's what I was going to do afterwards, right? But I knew that if I gave it everything I had, I'd be able to put my head down on the pillow at night and go to sleep. And like, that's how I've lived my life, because I just knew I was going to give everything I had to it. And I think that is something that people should do more, right? If it's important to you, like treat it like it's important to you. Like, this is like, I'm getting a little bit of a rant here, but like I remember I had to speak to the rookies in Atlanta, right? And I can't, like, you know, they're all there in the room, they got their notebooks out and they go to me and they say like, you know, like, what's the thing? Like, what's the it factor that got you here, right? And I said, well, like, how many of you like are here, and how many of your boys from high school or college would have, like, they say I would have killed to be in the NFL, or I would have died to be in the NFL. And all you have to do, you're here, you're in the building, is like take notes and show up on time and like know what to do on the field. And that's so underrated. You know, it's so underrated. And I think that's something that's always that always needs to be kept in mind, right? If it's important to you, treat it like it's important to you.
Appreciate the thoughtfulness on that. And I lied. Last question. Thoughts on the name? You have a favorite? Maybe have some you know, intel that you would like to share?
I wish I had some intel. I would be blabbing about that everywhere. I actually have no idea, and I don't really care. Because I think, like, I understand that it's important to people, like people who grew up Washington football team fans, like the history associated with the former name, I think is obviously extremely important and sentimental for a lot of people. So I understand why this process is taking a long time, and I understand why it's important to kind of pick the right thing. But, you know, to me as a former player, like, you know, you could be like the My Little Ponies, and I would be like, as long as we're here playing football, like, I'm ready to go. And so from a player standpoint, it doesn't really affect me. From a fan standpoint, I like football. Like, it doesn't really affect me. But I know a lot of people in the area feel very strongly and a strong emotional attachment to this team. Mm-hmm. And I think that the name should reflect that. And I think that's why this is so challenging. But I have no skin in the game with regards to that. You guys could probably answer that question better if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah. We might have to have Jason Wright on for that. But even then, I mean, you might not. You probably won't give it away. But thank you, Logan, so much for joining this interview. It's been an honor to have these last 30 minutes to just ask you questions about your career, your thoughts on the Washington football team, and even some general NFL questions as well. Is there anything you would like to plug at the very end of this interview, maybe your work or anything that you want to before we sign off?
Yeah, I guess I'm doing a radio show pregame with 106.7 The Fan. I'm doing some stuff with Julie Donaldson on her, like, the Washington football team network. And then for me, I do NFL film breakdowns on my Instagram, which is Logan_Paulsen 82. So, you know, no pressure to check any of that stuff out, but if you want some more Logan Paulsen in your life, that's how to get it.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the DMV Sports Zone channel, where we like to have fire content, fire interviews like this one. Also, go follow our Instagram page and Twitter page, lowercase DMV Sports Zone. And yeah, with that being said, hope you guys have a great Monday or Tuesday, depending on when this is uploaded. But yeah, see you guys on the next one. Peace.